I should never have clicked on that link. I know that now, but at the time it seemed like just another silly curiosity from the deep web. I had always heard scary stories about what could be found there, but I never believed them. To me, it was just a place full of old files, secret forums, and weird websites. At least that was how it was, until that night. It was late, and I had been browsing for a few hours. Nothing interesting appeared, just the same empty forums and broken links. I was about to turn off the computer when a link caught my attention. No title, no description, just a strange address. My curiosity got the better of my common sense. I clicked it. The screen went completely black. I thought it was just another offline website, but then a white message appeared in the center of the monitor. "We are now watching you." My spine shivered. It was a joke, right? Some hacker trying to scare unsuspecting visitors. I smiled nervously, but before I could close the tab, my webcam turned on by itself. The green light shone in the corner of the screen. I had never activated the camera on that laptop. The image on the monitor showed my own face, pale and frightened. I tried to turn the camera off, but nothing worked. The flap wouldn't close. The off button was stuck. My heart raced as a new message appeared below the feed. "We like to watch you sleep." I pulled a piece of tape and covered the camera, trying to stay calm. But at that moment, the computer rebooted itself. The screen went black again. My reflection appeared in the switched-off monitor, the room behind me lit only by the dim light of the lamp. For a second, I had the feeling that there was someone else in the room, a shadow moving in the corner. I shook my head. It was just nerves. The computer turned on again, but now the screen showed a sequence of videos. In the first, I was sitting exactly where I was at that moment, staring at the monitor, as if someone had been filming me just a few minutes ago. The second video was more disturbing. I was asleep in my bed. The footage was clear and continuous. Every detail of my breathing, every slight movement in bed was recorded. The strangest thing was, I didn't remember leaving the camera on that night. Someone had been in my room. My fingers were sweating as I tried to close the video, but it kept playing. The third video started playing. It was a real-time image. The camera showed my front door, outside my house. The video was dark, but I could see someone standing in front of the door, motionless. The person had their back to the camera, wearing a black coat with the hood pulled up. They didn't move, just breathing slowly, as if they were waiting for something. A new message appeared. "Open the door." It was at that moment that I heard the doorbell ring. The doorbell rang again, this time louder, more insistent. My heart was pounding in my chest, and each second seemed to drag by. The image on the screen showed the same person standing in front of my door, motionless, head tilted slightly to the side, as if listening. "Open the door." The message flashed on the screen, repeatedly. I stood frozen, not knowing what to do. I took a deep breath and tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe someone had gotten lost. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The third time the doorbell rang, it was followed by 3 sharp knocks on the wood of the door, loud enough to echo throughout the entire house. I picked up my cell phone and dialed the police number, my hands shaking so much that I almost dropped the phone. No signal. The screen showed, "Call not allowed." That had never happened before. I looked back at the monitor. The person was still there, now facing the camera. The hood covered his face, but something wasn't right. Even in the dim light, I could see there were no eyes or mouth, just a smooth, pale surface where his face should have been. I tried to convince myself it was a mask, some crazy prank by someone trying to scare me. But when he raised his hand and pressed his fingers against the door, my entire body shivered. The message changed. "This is your last chance." I didn't wait to find out what would happen. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed the sharpest knife I could find. Silence returned for a moment, which was even more terrifying. Suddenly, I heard the door latch slowly turn. It couldn't be. The door was locked. I looked back at the computer screen. The image was static now, but the door was open on the video. My instinct was to run. I crossed the living room, went up the stairs, and locked myself in my bedroom. I turned on the computer in my room, trying to access the cameras again, but all the images were down. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, almost shuffling footsteps, stopping right outside the door. I held the knife tightly, holding my breath, trying to make as little noise as possible. The sound stopped. For a second, I thought I was safe, but when I turned to the window, he was there, looking at me from outside, the same face with no eyes and no mouth. He was on the second floor. The window didn't make a sound when it opened. Everything went dark. 2 days later, when I woke up, I was in the hospital. A nurse told me that the neighbors had called the police after hearing noises in my house. They said they found me unconscious in the room, but there were no signs of a break-in. My computer was gone. I tried to tell them the truth, but no one believed me. They said I was stressed, that maybe I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. But to this day, I can't sleep without looking at the door and window several times before closing my eyes. And sometimes, I still hear soft knocks on the door in the middle of the night. Always 3 knocks. I never opened the door again. I've always been passionate about games. Strategy games, mystery games, puzzles. I love the challenge, the feeling of being in control, of solving something complex. But what I'm going to tell you now has nothing to do with fun. It was a terrible mistake, a game that I should never have started. It was an ordinary night. I was browsing the deep web, looking for something different, when I came across a website called The Final Game. The description was vague, but it promised a unique experience for those who were brave enough to play. Without thinking twice, I clicked on the Start Game button. The screen went black for a few seconds. Then, a message appeared. Are you ready to start? Curious, I clicked yes. A new message appeared. The rules are simple. Complete the tasks, give up, and there will be consequences. I laughed. Consequences? What kind of game was this? The first task appeared right after. Take a picture of your window now. I thought it was just a silly prank, but to get in the mood, I decided to follow the instructions. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the window. I went back to the website and uploaded it. Within seconds, a new message appeared. Very well. Now go to the kitchen and turn off all the lights. That was starting to bother me. How did the game know I was home? But again, I thought it was just an elaborate prank. Curiosity overcame fear, and I did as the website asked. I turned off the kitchen lights and went back to the computer. The next message was different. Open the front door. Someone is waiting for you. My entire body froze. My heart started beating faster. It couldn't be true. I slowly got up and walked to the door, trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence. I pressed my ear against the wood, hoping to hear something, but everything was silent. When I opened the door, there was no one there. I sighed in relief and went back to the computer, ready to close that damn game. But as soon as I sat down, a new message appeared on the screen. Why didn't you say hello to the man in the black coat? The air left my lungs. I looked back at the door. There was no one outside. My hands began to sweat, and the sound of the keyboard seemed louder than it should have been. Another message appeared, more direct. Last chance. If you want to stay alive, close your bedroom window now. I turned quickly and saw the window open, with the curtains gently swaying in the breeze, but I didn't remember opening it. And that's when I realized someone was watching me from the other side. For a second, I was paralyzed. Someone really was there, on the other side of the window, watching me. I couldn't see the face, just a tall, still silhouette, shrouded in darkness. My heart raced. The air felt heavier, harder to breathe. I slammed the window shut, locking it immediately. When I looked back at the computer screen, a new message was flashing. You're late. He's already inside. The blood ran cold in my veins. I looked around. Every shadow in the room seemed deeper, every noise louder. I tried to remain calm, tried to believe it was just an elaborate prank. But then I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Slow, shuffled. I stood up, Gripping my cell phone tightly, I turned on the flashlight, shining it on the half-open door. The footsteps stopped. The silence in the air was so heavy that I could hear my own breathing. "Who's there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer. The light from my flashlight flickered as I approached the door. The hallway was empty, just darkness ahead. But there was something strange on the floor. Damp footprints leading straight to my bedroom. That was when the door behind me slammed shut. I turned quickly, but saw nothing but the curtains gently swaying. Another message appeared on my computer. Last phase, run. Without a second thought, I left the room and ran down the stairs. My mind screamed at me to get out of the house as quickly as possible. The sound of my footsteps echoed off the walls, and with every turn, I felt like someone was right behind me, breathing down my neck. I reached the front door and threw it open, stumbling outside. The cold night air enveloped me, and for a moment, I felt safe. But as I looked out at the deserted street, a final message appeared on my phone. "You should never have started." The screen went blank. Silence returned, but I knew I was not alone. Something had come out of that game and was still with me. I have not returned home since that night. I am constantly on the move, always looking over my shoulder, waiting for that thing to find me again. Because deep down, I know that this game is not over yet, and that it will never have a winner. It all started with a simple curiosity. I had always heard about the dark places of the deep web, the secret forums and the scary stories, but I never took them seriously until that night. It was late, and I was browsing websites that promised bizarre experiences. Nothing really caught my attention until I found a link called Soul Auction. The description was vague, but the name of the website intrigued me. Against my better judgment, I clicked. The page loaded slowly, and what appeared made me uncomfortable. It was an auction site, but they didn't sell ordinary objects. The categories were listed in red letters: body, life, soul. At first, I thought it was a joke in bad taste, but the more I explored, the stranger everything became. The images were disturbing, photos of people with blurred faces, vague descriptions, as if they were for sale. At the top of the page, a countdown marked the time remaining until the next auction. There were 2 minutes left. I was about to close the tab, but something made me stop. Curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what would happen when the counter hit 0. The words, "Auction started," appeared in red in the center of the screen. The first item was listed, Soul, ID 24,731. The description was short, available, age 28, starting bid, $10,000. My stomach churned. What did that mean? How could someone sell a soul? Before I could react, the bids started rolling in. $15,000, $20,000, $50,000. Faster and faster, the bids were rising in seconds. Suddenly, the site froze, and a new window opened. Interested in participating, enter your name to register. That's when I realized something was very wrong. My name was already filled in the field. How did they know who I was? My heart raced. My hands sweated as I tried to close the window, but nothing worked. The screen flickered, and one last message appeared. You have been added to the next auction. My face reflected on the screen was paler than ever. Before I could process what was happening, the countdown to the next auction began. 5 minutes. I turned off the computer, threw the power cord away, and stood in the dark, trying to convince myself that it was just a hacker prank. But at that exact moment, my phone vibrated. The message was simple. Your auction starts soon. Get ready. My entire body was shaking. I held my phone tightly, trying to understand what was happening. Your auction starts soon. Get ready. The message flashed on the screen, like a death sentence. I looked around, expecting to hear footsteps, noises, anything that would indicate someone's presence. The absolute silence only made everything worse. I took a deep breath, trying to convince myself that this was just a cruel joke. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The computer, which I had turned off seconds before, turned on by itself. The screen glowed in the darkness, illuminating the room with a cold light. The countdown to the next auction continued. 15 seconds. The page was different. In place of the vague description, there was now a photo of me, taken at that moment, sitting exactly where I was, my face etched in terror. Below the image, a single word: available. I tried to pull out the power cord again, but it seemed stuck. The mouse was unresponsive. The keyboard was frozen. All I could do was watch as the countdown ticked down to 0. The auction began. The first bid appeared immediately: $10,000. My heart sank. More bids began to appear, one after the other, higher and higher. $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. Within seconds, the bids reached numbers that made no sense. I screamed, but no sound came out. It was then that the sound of a notification filled the room. A new message appeared on the screen: buyer confirmed, collection in progress. The air became thick, almost impossible to breathe. I felt an invisible pressure on my chest, as if something was pulling me down. My body felt heavy, my hands tingled, my vision began to blur. Then I heard footsteps, heavy, slow. They were coming from the hallway, each one closer than the last. I looked at the door, expecting it to open at any moment, but it remained closed. The sound grew louder, as if it were inside the walls. The computer screen flashed once more, with a final message: the soul has been sold. Thank you for participating. Everything went dark. I woke up hours later, lying on the bedroom floor, my body cold, my head throbbing. The computer was turned off, the power cord still unplugged. For a second, I thought it had been a dream. But then, I saw my cell phone on the floor, with a new message. It was just the first payment. See you soon. Since that night, nothing has returned to normal. My dreams are fragments of darkness and footsteps. My days are filled with a constant feeling of being watched. I changed computers, cell phones, moved cities, but the messages always find a way to reach me, because deep down, I know my soul no longer belongs to me. I have always been fascinated by unusual sounds. Ever since I was a child, I enjoyed recording noises and trying to discover their origins. The simple act of capturing something strange and deciphering it gave me a sense of control. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I found that night. It was late, around 3 in the morning, when I remembered a conversation on a forum about an audio file called "The Sound of Nothing." The comments ranged from skepticism to outright fear. Some said that if you listened to it until the end, something inside you would change. Others claimed that the file was cursed. Curious and, I confess, a little bored, I decided to look for it on the deep web. It didn't take long until I found it on a nameless website, just a black page with a download button. I clicked it without thinking twice. The file wasn't big, just a few megabytes. As soon as it finished downloading, I put on my headphones and pressed play. For the first few seconds, there was no sound at all, just absolute silence, as if the file were empty. At first, I thought it was a corrupted file, but something kept me going. The silence was different, dense, almost palpable, as if something was trapped inside, waiting to reveal itself. Then, the sound started. It was low, distant, like a whisper coming from far away. At first, it was impossible to make out what it was saying, but as the audio continued, the whispers grew louder and closer. The sensation was unsettling. The sound seemed to be inside the room. I looked around, trying to locate the source, but everything remained dark and still. The sound began to change, turning into a slow, heavy breathing, as if someone was right next to me. My heart raced. The air seemed colder, and I could feel a presence, although I couldn't see it. Still, I kept listening. That's when I heard my name. Lucas. I immediately ripped off the headphones, throwing them on the floor. The audio was still playing, but now it wasn't through the headphones. The sound was coming straight through the walls, reverberating around the room. The breathing grew louder, getting closer and closer. And then, silence again. For a moment, I thought it was over. But before I could breathe a sigh of relief, my computer screen flashed and a message appeared. Why did it stop? It's not over yet. The message on the screen kept flashing insistently. Why did it stop? It's not over yet. My heart felt like it wanted to beat out of my chest, and the silence around me was so heavy that I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. The screen went black for a second, and then the audio came back, even louder, even closer. This time, the sound was no longer distant breathing. It was a low, anguished cry, something that seemed to pass through the walls. I closed the program, but the audio continued. I tried to turn off the computer, but it wouldn't respond. The sound kept growing, filling the room. That's when I heard footsteps. Slow, precise. Someone was coming up the stairs. My body froze. The footsteps were getting closer and closer, and I could feel their weight in the air, as if the house itself was breathing along with the invisible presence. I grabbed my cell phone to call someone, the police, anyone. But the screen was frozen, just like the computer. The footsteps stopped outside my door. The breathing on the other side was so loud that it seemed to be inside my room. Everything went cold, and the smell of something damp and old invaded the air, like rotten wood mixed with wet earth. The door creaked slowly, opening just enough to leave a dark crack. Then I saw a shadow moving. It was projected on the wall, long and distorted, but there was nothing there to create that reflection. My body wanted to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. That's when I heard the voice again, but this time it wasn't a whisper. It was a scream, deafening and desperate. Don't turn back. My legs gave out, and I fell to my knees, the scream still echoing in my head. Everything stopped for a second. The sound disappeared. The room plunged into absolute silence, as if the world had frozen. And then, the door closed by itself. The computer screen returned to normal. The audio file was over, as if it had never been played. I sat there, trying to catch my breath, my heart still beating wildly. My phone suddenly lit up, and a message appeared on the screen. You heard me. We are with you now. Since that night, I have never been able to sleep properly. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up to the same sound of footsteps in the hallway, followed by slow, heavy breathing, as if it were still there, outside my door. But I never open it. And the worst of all, the audio is still on my computer. It opens by itself every now and then, always playing the same thing, my name being whispered, closer each time. I have always been skeptical about stories of ghosts, curses, or supernatural entities. For me, everything had a logical explanation, something that technology could prove or disprove. But what happened to me was beyond logic, beyond anything I could imagine. It all started when I received a strange file in my email. The subject line was, "Are you ready to see the future?" There was no sender, just an attachment called vision.mp4. I thought it was a prank, maybe a virus, but my curiosity got the better of me. I opened the video. At first it was just a static image of a dark room, lit by a dim monitor light. I looked more closely and noticed something disturbing. It was my room. The same desk, the same computer, even the jacket I had thrown on the chair a few hours earlier. The video showed nothing strange, just a still image of the room. But little by little, the scene began to change. The lights on the monitor flickered, and the camera slowly moved to the bedroom door. That's when I saw the door open on its own. In the video, a long, indistinct shadow entered the room, moving as if floating. It stopped next to the bed, watching something, or someone, watching me. My heart raced. I paused the video, trying to convince myself that it was some elaborate setup, but then the video started playing again on its own. Now the camera was focused on my face as I slept. The shadow leaned over me. The video froze for a second, and then the screen went black. A white message appeared. "See you soon." I stood there, staring at the black screen, unable to move. The room was silent, but the air seemed heavier by the second. I took a deep breath, trying to process what I had just seen. How was this video showing my room? Who could have filmed this? The message remained on the screen. "See you soon." Suddenly, the computer turned off by itself. The silence that followed was suffocating. In the corner of the room, the chair rocked slightly, as if someone had just gotten up from it. But I was alone. The feeling of being watched overcame me. My eyes swept the room, trying to find anything out of place. That was when I heard the sound. 3 slow knocks on the door. My heart stopped for a second. Who could be there at this hour? I stood up slowly, each step heavy as lead. When I got close to the door, I hesitated. I didn't want to open it, but I knew I had to. I gripped the doorknob tightly and, before turning it, asked, "Who's there?" No answer, just silence. I opened the door at once, but the hallway was empty. The dim light from the room illuminated the floor, revealing something that made me freeze. Wet footprints that went from the door to the middle of the hallway and disappeared. I went back to the room, my heart racing. The computer had turned on again, and the video was back. But this time, it was different. The camera was filming in real time. It was my room, exactly as it was at that moment. In the video, I saw myself standing still, staring at the screen. But there was something else. Behind me, the shadow was back. It was clearer now, with long arms and skeletal fingers that slowly extended towards me. I turned around on impulse, but there was no one there. The computer screen began to flicker, and a new message appeared. "You can't run away." The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway again, louder and louder, as if someone was running straight for the bedroom door. I locked the door and stepped away, holding my breath, expecting the worst. But instead of knocking, everything went silent again. The computer shut down once more. I grabbed my cell phone to try to call someone, but the screen showed only one sentence, written in red letters: "We're in." The light in the room flickered, and the air became so cold that my breath came out in the form of steam. I knew that this wasn't just a digital prank. Something real, something alive, had come out of that video. Since that night, everything has changed. I deleted the file, bought a new computer, but it didn't work. The entity is still with me. Sometimes when I'm alone, I hear footsteps in the hallway or feel a cold touch on my shoulder, even when no one is around. And every time I turn on my computer, the same message appears, even on a new device. "See you soon." I never liked Halloween. For many people, it's just a fun day, full of costumes and children running around looking for candy. But for me, this date means something else. It means death. And the last time I saw my brother Carl alive was on the night of October 31st, 1998. Carl was never the kind of guy who liked trouble. He was 21 years old, had a decent job, and a small child to take care of. He didn't drink, he didn't get into fights. He just wanted to live his life in peace. That Halloween night, he asked me out. The idea was to get some candy for my nephew and then go home, but I refused. "You go. I'm not in the mood to see people in costumes," I said. He laughed. "You're missing out on the chance to eat some free candy," he joked. The last thing I saw was Carl closing the door and walking down the stairs. If I had known it would be the last time, I would have told him to stay. The neighborhood was full of children and parents walking through the streets lit by pumpkin lanterns, decorated houses, laughter, the smell of sweet popcorn in the air. Everything seemed normal. Carl got in the car with his girlfriend, and they went to pick up his son at his mother-in-law's house. But on the way, they passed a group of teenagers, and one of them threw an egg at the car window. Carl stopped the car. He sighed. His girlfriend asked him to leave it alone, But Carl was never one to stay quiet when he saw something wrong. He got out. He looked at the group of teenagers laughing on the sidewalk. "Don't you have something better to do?" he asked. That was it. Just one question. No cursing, no threats, just an attempt to teach a little respect. But the boy who threw the egg didn't like it. And that's when it all started. The streets were busy. Parents held bags of candy. Children ran around dressed as witches and monsters. No one paid attention to the argument. No one noticed the hatred growing in that teenager's eyes. He just stared at Carl, with a mocking smile on his lips. And then he said a phrase that haunts my family to this day. "You're going to pay for this." Then the group left, and Carl got back in the car. He sighed. "These kids think they can do anything," he muttered. His girlfriend held his hand. "Let's go home." Carl started the engine, and that was when fate was sealed, because the boy had come back, and this time he wasn't empty-handed. Carl didn't see the young man step out of the dark alley. He didn't see the glint of metal in his hand. The boy raised his arm. He took aim and pulled the trigger. The bang echoed in the street. For a second, everything was silent. Then, the screams started. Carl's girlfriend screamed first. The children, the parents, the neighbors. Everyone looked in the direction of the car and saw the blood running down the steering wheel. Carl couldn't react. The shot was accurate. The bullet went through the side of his head. His eyes blinked a few times. His fingers loosened on the steering wheel. And then, the car slid slowly into the middle of the street. It hit a pole and stopped. But Carl was no longer there. The shooter didn't run. He didn't scream. He didn't laugh. He just put the gun in his jacket and disappeared into the darkness, as if he hadn't just taken a life, as if he hadn't just destroyed a family. Carl's girlfriend tried to hold him. "Stay with me." She pressed her hands against the wound, but it was no use. His eyes were empty. No response, no life. The whole street stopped, and that night, Halloween was never the same for anyone in that neighborhood. The police arrived quickly, but not quickly enough. The killer had already disappeared. Witnesses said he was a teenager, probably 16 or 17 years old, but no one could give him a name. No one knew who he was. They only knew that he had killed for nothing, and that he would probably kill again. Carl's funeral was sad and silent. My mother couldn't stop crying. My nephew, too young to understand, kept asking, "Where's Daddy?" And how does one explain to a child that their father died because he complained about an egg thrown at their car? How does one explain that life can end so quickly? The days passed. The weeks dragged on. The pain didn't ease. But something even stranger happened. Because every Halloween, my mother receives a card, always with the same message, handwritten, unsigned. "Happy Halloween." They never found out who sent it. The police investigated. Nothing. But we knew. Because murderers like that boy, they don't feel guilty. They're proud of what they did. And deep down, he wanted us to know. He wanted us to never forget. To this day, my mother doesn't throw away the cards. She keeps them, all of them. Because one day, maybe, the truth will finally come out. And when that happens, the monster behind that bullet may finally pay for what he did. I should never have gone into those woods. But back then, I thought it was all just a story, a legend to scare children, something adults made up to keep us from venturing too far. But I was wrong, so wrong. And that night, I learned it the hard way. The story had been told for decades. In the 1970s, my town, a small community in the backwoods of California, was surrounded by dense forests and forgotten trails. The elders always told us not to go in there after dark, because something was watching us, and if you went in, you might never come out. The stories told of a tall, thin man with arms that were too long and a face as pale as wax. No one knew his name, but everyone called him the Man in the Woods. They said he only appeared to those who dared to defy the legend, that he walked slowly, but always got closer, no matter how fast you ran. and that if he got close enough, you disappeared. I never believed that. It was just a story to scare children, and that Halloween night, I wanted to prove it. I invited my friends Kevin and Danny to go with me to the forest. 5 minutes and we'll be back, I said. If that legend were true, they would have found a body by now, right? Kevin laughed. Danny hesitated, but in the end, everyone agreed. We didn't know, but we had already been seen. The forest was dense and silent. The wind whistled through the trees, and the dry leaves crunched under our feet. With each step, the air seemed heavier, but I ignored it, because there was nothing there, nothing but us and the darkness. At least, that's what I thought, until we heard the first sound. A branch snapped behind us. We turned quickly. Nothing. It was just an animal, Kevin said, trying to sound confident. But Danny was already scared. Let's get out of here, I laughed. What? You believe that nonsense now? He didn't answer, because that was when we saw the silhouette. A man was standing in the middle of the trees, tall, motionless. His face was hidden in the darkness. Danny grabbed my arm tightly. Who's that? The man didn't answer. He didn't move. He just watched us. And then he took a step forward. That's when we ran. My heart was pounding. The branches were cutting into my skin. I just wanted to get out of there. But with each passing second, the sound of footsteps behind us grew louder. He wasn't running, but he was getting closer nonetheless. And then Kevin stumbled. He screamed. I looked back for a second and wished I had never done that. The man in the woods was right behind Kevin, and for the first time, I saw his face, pale, expressionless, eyes sunken and dark as night. He raised his hand, and Kevin screamed, a sound that echoed through the entire forest. And then, silence. I wanted to help him, but Danny pulled me. He's gone, he said, tears in his eyes. And I ran. I ran like I had never run before. The sound of footsteps continued, until finally, we reached the road. And when I looked back, the forest was empty. No sign of Kevin, no sign of the man, nothing. We called the police. The search went on for weeks. They searched every inch of that forest, but they never found anything. No clues, no body. It was as if Kevin had never existed. Some people say he ran away. Others say he was taken. I know only one thing. If you walk through the forest at night, in the middle of the silence, you can hear a whisper on the wind. Faint, almost imperceptible. Kevin's voice, crying for help. Kevin never came back. And believe me, we tried to find him. The police, the firefighters, the townspeople. They all searched. Nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no sound. It was like he had been erased from the world. But I knew the truth, because every night I heard his voice. Days passed, then weeks, until the town stopped searching. The police concluded that Kevin had run away or gotten lost in the woods. Case closed, but not for me. I couldn't sleep, because every night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., I woke up to the same sound, a faint voice, far away, almost like an echo. Help me! It was Kevin. I was sure of it, and I needed to get back to the woods. Danny called me crazy. Do you want to be next? But I couldn't just forget. So that night, I grabbed my flashlight and headed back to the road. The same place, the same silence. The forest was waiting for me. Mist crept across the ground. The trees seemed bigger, darker. I followed the same steps as before, and then I heard it. The whispers, faint, coming from the middle of the forest. Help me, help me. My heart raced. I ran until I reached a small clearing, and there, in the center, there was a mark on the ground, a circle. Inside it, deep footprints in the dirt, and right in the middle, Kevin's shirt. My whole body froze. The shirt was clean, as if it had been left there recently, as if someone wanted me to find it. It was then that the temperature dropped. My chest felt heavy, the air felt thick, and behind me, the branches cracked. I turned slowly, and there, among the trees, he stood, the man in the woods, tall, dark, unmoving, but now He wasn't alone. Behind him, shadows moved, shapes of people, familiar faces. Kevin. His eyes were sunken, empty. His face was pale. And then, he opened his mouth. But it wasn't his voice that came out. It was the voice of the man in the woods. "Now you're next." I ran. But the whispers followed me. The forest tried to swallow me. The branches pulled me in. The ground sank beneath my feet. Until finally, I saw the lights of the road. I ran. I survived. But I was never the same. Since that night, Kevin has never been mentioned again. The town tried to forget. But I know the truth. I know he's still there. Trapped in those woods. Trapped with him. And if you walk down that road, late at night, in the absolute silence, maybe you'll hear the whispers. "Help me." But if you do, don't answer. Because that means he's chosen you. And that, very soon, the man in the woods will have another soul. Halloween has always been my favorite holiday. When I was a kid, nothing got me more excited than dressing up in a costume and going out with my friends to trick or treat. That night, October 31st, 1974, was no different. My mom dressed me up as a little vampire, and I went door to door with my best friend, Timothy O'Brien. The street was full of laughing children, bags of candy swinging, jack-o'-lanterns glowing on porches. Everything seemed perfect, until the night ended, and Timothy started to feel sick. We both got a lot of candy that night, but there was one special one, a Pixie Stix, those little tubes of colorful sugar that kids loved. Timothy grabbed his as soon as he got home. His father, Ronald O'Brien, watched, smiling. "Eat it, son," he said, and Timothy ate it. A few minutes later, he started screaming. His eyes went wide. He grabbed his throat and fell to the ground. I will never forget the sounds, the screams, the spasms, the drool dripping from the corners of his mouth. His mother was screaming for help. Ronald ran to the phone. He called an ambulance, but it was too late. Before they reached the hospital, Timothy O'Brien died in his father's arms, and no one knew why. Still, the next day, the town was in shock. How could a healthy child just drop dead after eating candy? The police were called. They took all the candy Timothy had collected that night. And then, they discovered the horror. The Pixie Stix were contaminated, laced with potassium cyanide, strong enough to kill 2 adults. And that's when the question arose. Who did this? The investigation began. The police believed that someone in the neighborhood had distributed poisoned candy. The news alerted parents. Children cried, seeing their bags of candy being thrown away. Fear spread, but something didn't make sense, because the truth was much worse than anyone could imagine. And when the police found out who was behind it all, no one could believe it. The investigation continued. The police questioned neighbors, analyzed the candy of other children, and looked for any clues that would lead to the killer. Fear gripped the city. Many parents threw out all their Halloween candy. Others vowed never to let their children go trick-or-treating again. But then the investigators found something that no one wanted to believe, because the person responsible was not a stranger. It was someone who was supposed to protect Timothy. It was his own father. The police noticed inconsistencies in Ronald O'Brien's testimony. At first, he swore he knew nothing. He said the candy had been delivered by a neighbor, but he couldn't say who. But each time he told the story, he changed a detail, until an investigator asked the right question. Do you have life insurance on your son? Ronald's silence was the answer. They discovered that weeks before Timothy's death, Ronald O'Brien had taken out several life insurance policies in his son's name. And even stranger, the morning after Timothy's death, Ronald called the insurance company. He wanted to know when he could get the money. He hadn't even buried his son yet, but he was already worried about the reward. The police ransacked Ronald's house and found even more macabre evidence. He had been researching poisons for months. He visited pharmacies asking where he could buy cyanide, and witnesses said he seemed excited about the idea of a big buck coming his way. He wanted to pay off his debts, but not with his own efforts. He wanted to pay with his son's life. And to cover it up, he also poisoned other children's candy. But luckily, they didn't eat it. Timothy was the only one who died. Ronald O'Brien was arrested. The trial was one of the most shocking in Texas history. The entire town wanted justice. People called him the Pixie Sticks Man, the monster who turned Halloween into a living nightmare. He was sentenced to death, and on March 31st, 1984, he was executed by lethal injection. But to the end, he never admitted what he had done. Today, many parents are still afraid of poisoned candy. The case of Ronald O'Brien created a national paranoia, but the truth is, the greatest threat was never a stranger. It was a father who was supposed to protect, and a monster who lived inside his own house. Halloween has always been my favorite holiday. I loved decorating my house, hanging orange lights on my porch, and creating the spookiest garden in the neighborhood. In 2015, I decided to go all out. I bought fake tombstones, fake spider webs, and even a mannequin dressed as a corpse. I wanted my house to be the scariest in the neighborhood, and I did, but not in the way I expected. Because that night, I discovered that there was something real among my decorations, and it was a real corpse. That afternoon, I spent hours setting up the decorations. I put plastic skeletons in the yard, hung rubber bats on the porch, and scattered fake rocks to imitate a cemetery. The final touch, a body lying in the garden, right next to the tree. It was a perfect figure, old clothes, a face covered by a torn mask. From a distance, it looked like an abandoned corpse. Neighbors passing by complimented my work. "It's realistic," they said. I laughed. "That's the idea. If only I knew." That night, the children started arriving. They knocked on the door, laughing and shouting, "Trick or treat." The yard lit by the lanterns created a spooky effect. But after a while, I noticed something strange. Some of the children stopped and stared at the body in the garden. Others whispered to each other. A little girl grabbed her mother's arm. "I don't like that one," she said, pointing to the body next to the tree. I laughed. "It's just a doll." But she didn't seem convinced, and for some reason, neither did I. The night wore on, and the groups began to thin out. I was tired and thinking about picking everything up. That's when I heard someone knocking on the door. But when I opened it, no one was there. I looked out into the yard. The wind was shaking the decorations, but something felt wrong. The body, it wasn't in the same position anymore. I swallowed hard. I approached slowly. The mannequin should have been facing left. Now it was facing the street. Maybe the wind moved it, I thought, but my heart started pounding. Something didn't feel right. I touched the mannequin's leg. The texture was strange, cold, stiff. Then I smelled it, and I knew in that moment that it wasn't a dummy. It was a real body. My throat went dry. I backed away, feeling my stomach churn. I called the police, my hands shaking. "There's a body in my yard," I whispered, feeling a chill run down my spine. The attendant hesitated. "Is it a decoration?" "Number, it's real." The police arrived quickly. One of them shone a flashlight on the body. And then, everyone froze. It was a woman. Her skin was pale, her neck covered in bruises. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. Her clothes were stained with dirt and dried blood. She had been there for hours, and dozens of children had walked past her without noticing. Or worse, they had noticed, and I hadn't. The entire street was lit up with red and blue lights. Neighbors came out to see what was happening. Everyone wanted to know who she was, how she got there, but no one had any answers. And the worst was yet to come, because when the police reviewed the neighborhood security cameras, they discovered that someone had placed it there. The police asked everyone to stay inside, but who could sleep after that? The street, which had previously been full of laughing children, now looked like a scene from a horror movie. Flashing lights, shadows moving between the police cars, and right there, in the middle of my garden, a dead body that I hadn't noticed all night. But the scariest part was yet to come, because when the investigators checked the security cameras, They discovered that someone had put it there, and worse, someone had been watching all night long. The images showed something that made me freeze. At 3:12 in the morning, when the street was empty, a dark silhouette appeared at the end of the street. It was a man, tall, thin, with a long coat that dragged on the ground. He walked slowly towards my garden, and without hesitation, he placed the body there, as if it were part of the decoration. Then he walked away and stood there, on the corner, watching, the whole night. I felt my heart stop. The policeman pressed his lips together. "Do you recognize this person?" I shook my head. I've never seen her before, but deep down, I knew this was no coincidence. This man knew where to leave the body. He knew no one would notice, and somehow, he knew I would find him. The investigation began. Who was the woman? What happened to her? The coroner confirmed that she had been dead for at least 6 hours before she was found. In other words, she was already in my backyard before Halloween even started. That means that while I was putting up my decorations, while I was hanging spider webs, while I was laughing at the kids knocking on the door, the body was already there, and I didn't notice. The victim's identity was discovered a few days later. Her name was Lisa Montgomery. She didn't live in my town. In fact, no one knew what she was doing there. She had no friends in the neighborhood, no connection to the street. And then, the scariest question of all arose. If she wasn't from here, if no one knew her, why did the killer choose my yard to leave her? The police never found the man in the coat. The security camera footage wasn't clear enough to identify him. It was as if he didn't exist, and after that night, he was never seen again. But I know the truth. I know he's still out there, watching, waiting, because the following year, on the same day, I found another gift, on my porch, without anyone seeing who left it. A pixie sticks, closed, intact, and empty inside. I never liked that house. When my parents decided we were going to move to rural Ohio, I tried to argue, but it was just me, my mother, and my younger sister, Emma. After the divorce, my mother wanted a fresh start. "It'll be good for us," she said. But from day one, I knew something was wrong. And that Halloween night, I knew for sure, because I saw it. I saw the face in the window. The house was at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by old trees. It had 2 stories, a dark basement, and an attic that my mother used to store old things. The place was big, too quiet. From that first night, I had trouble sleeping. It was like something was moving inside the walls. Emma felt it too. Every night she woke up crying. "Did you sleep badly?" I asked once. She nodded, hugging her teddy bear. "I think there's someone out there." I tried to laugh. Maybe it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. That Halloween night, we stayed home. Emma didn't want to go trick-or-treating. My mom was tired from work. I watched TV in the living room while Emma played upstairs. The house was quiet, until I heard a noise coming from the hallway, like someone was shuffling their feet. "Emma?" I called. Silence. So I slowly walked upstairs. The hallway was dark, the light flickering dimly, and that's when I looked at Emma's bedroom door and saw the shadow, standing still, outside the window, looking in. My body froze. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. Emma's bedroom window was on the 2nd floor. There was no balcony. There was no way anyone could be out there. But the shadow was still there, tall, still, its face pressed against the glass. I wanted to run, scream, but then Emma turned. She looked at the window and said something that made me tremble. "Mommy, what are you doing out there?" My heart raced. I ran into the bedroom and pulled Emma behind me. She screamed, startled, but when I looked back at the window, the shadow was gone, just the reflection of the room in the glass, nothing else. But I knew what I had seen, and it wasn't my mother. I walked downstairs with Emma in my arms. My mother looked at us confused. "What happened?" "The face in the window," Emma whimpered. My mother frowned. "What face?" I gasped. Someone was looking into the room. She laughed nervously. There's no way. The window is on the second floor. But for a second, I noticed something on her face. She looked scared, too. We locked the doors and closed all the curtains. Emma slept in my room that night, but I couldn't close my eyes, because outside, the wind was beating against the windows, and with each gust, I was sure I heard something else. A faint whisper, a light tap on the glass, and in the dark reflection of the window, I saw it. A figure, standing, watching me, waiting. I wanted to believe that I had imagined it all, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But that night, something proved to me that it was real, because when I woke up, with Emma sleeping next to me, my bedroom window was open, and on the floor, right below the glass, there were wet footprints. My breath caught. I looked at Emma. She was still asleep, hugging her teddy bear. The hallway light was on, the door ajar. My mother must have checked the room, but something was wrong, because the footprints were coming from inside the room, not outside. I closed the window, my heart racing. I had to wake my mother. I left the room, my bare feet on the cold floor. The house was silent, dark. But then I heard a sound, faint, slow, coming from the hallway. Footsteps. Someone was there. I hid behind the door. The footsteps got closer. The dim light from the stairs illuminated a long shadow on the floor, a silhouette standing at the entrance to the hallway, motionless, the face hidden in the darkness. My chest tightened. I tried to hold my breath. The silence was total, until the shadow moved, and then it spoke. "Why did you close the window?" The voice was whispered, scratched. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't Emma. It wasn't anyone I knew. And then, slowly, the face emerged from the darkness, and I saw it. Pale skin, sunset, empty eyes, a smile that was too big. It was the same face I had seen in the window, but now, he was inside my house. My muscles tensed. The hallway seemed narrower. Time slowed. Then the thing tilted its head, as if it was studying me, as if it was amused. "You saw me. Now I can come in." The air grew heavy. The darkness seemed to swallow everything around me. And then, he moved. I screamed. I ran to my room and locked the door. Emma woke with a start. "What's wrong?" "Someone's here," I whispered, gripping the doorknob. The house was silent, but I knew he was still there, waiting. My mother ran into the room. "What's all that screaming?" "Someone's in the house," I said, almost crying. She frowned. She grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and went downstairs. I stood there, holding Emma, listening. The silence lasted a minute, 2, 3. Then my mother came back and said something that took my breath away. All the doors were locked, but I saw it. Emma saw it. Someone had been inside that house, and that night, I realized the truth. He didn't need the door, because he'd always been there, outside, waiting, and all he needed was for someone to look. The next night, we closed all the curtains. We locked all the windows and went to bed early. But before I closed my eyes, I heard it. Outside, in the wind, low, almost imperceptible, a laugh and a whisper. "See me again."